Hello. Let's see. Is this on? Okay. I can never tell. When you're talking into it, it's an odd kind of sensation, isn't it? Thank you all for joining. Let me just do a couple things. Point out to you, first of all, I distributed a summary that the Holy Cow group put together and that our own Gregory has summarized even farther. There's some extra copies up here, so if you don't have one, y'all need some extras. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we are calling this session a parish information session. This is not an annual meeting. This is really to focus on summarizing the results of the survey, as we mentioned earlier. The vestry and the search committee spent the better part of 3 hours listening to the results of the survey. I hope y'all are ready to do the same. Just kidding. I think John would be very upset if we were still here 3 hours from now, because he's going to be getting ready for the Oregon Spectacular. So what we're going to attempt to do today is somewhat briefly walk through the highlights of the survey and then talk about our trajectory and our pathway forward. And then at the end, we'd like to give you just a couple of updates, because you may realize there are quite a few things going on right now. And so we want to take some time and just provide those updates to you. And at any time, if anyone has any questions, please let us know. We're really just trying to share information with you. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started here. Okay, so I talked through this very briefly. We're going to talk primarily today about the survey results. We're going to give you a brief update on the search committee and positions in the church, and then just mention any upcoming events that come to mind in case you did not see them in the e-blast. Okay, yes, Robert. Thank you for saying that. And I don't know how to help that problem. But thank you so much for pointing that out. It is all in there. In fact, please do, if you happen to be able to read the slides, you're going to find everything in the handout in front of you. So you should be okay. Let's go ahead and get started. I have my copy here, so I'll follow along with you in case you cannot read. But just want to hit the high points. I guess it was in December now, we distributed, and Phyllis Delaney really spearheaded this entire effort. I'm just going to talk through it, but Phyllis is truly our expert and point person and has just done so much work on this, so thank you. In December, she worked with Holy Cow to, is that better? Wonderful, thank you. That's better, Dee. Yes, that's better. Thank you. It takes a village. Wonderful, thank you. Okay. Just a couple others coming in. For those of you who just joined, if you cannot see the screen well, fear not. The handout that we have up here really is what you need to know. The slide points are simply for presentation purposes and were completely taken from the survey and the summary you have in front of you. So let's talk about the survey. In December, Holy Cow Consulting, we refer to it here as HCC, helped us administer a parish-wide survey. Many of you participated in that survey. We used a number of different formats and methodology to administer the survey. It was available in paper form, certainly in paper form, electronically. And because I think we had it available in multiple formats, we actually had a pretty good response rate. As you can see here, and again in your handout, 137 responses. That equates to more than 70% of our average Sunday attendance. So from a statistical standpoint and from the consulting group standpoint, that response rate gave validity to our results. So we feel confident in what we're sharing here with you today. This is a busy slide. I will go ahead and acknowledge it. And I am not a slide reader, but let me just try to walk you through what we're talking about here. And if you're following along in the handout, you'll see these major topic areas in bold on your handout. So the initial one that we're going to talk through is what's called congregational vitality. So there are two things that accounts for a congregation's vitality. They call it out as high levels of satisfaction and energy. So when we looked at our survey results, 21% indicated satisfied, and 31% felt the church has a compelling sense of purpose and energy. But there were a large number who were kind of on the fence, taking a wait-and-see approach, so did not indicate high levels of satisfaction or high levels of energy. The way that Holy Cow used that information is to categorize our congregation along with others, and the way they have categorized it in their experience leads them to score us as a low average and a recovery/reinvention congregation. Yes, Jean.
Congregations that are compared with congregations that are in the same process as we are, or is it a wider group of congregations?
That is a great question. I don't know, Phyllis, do you know the answer?
They use all participants in this tool, this assessment tool. Nationally. But are most people using that tool, using it for the purpose we are? Yes. Looking for collecting or something? Yes. Okay. They're also using it for strategic planning and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, sure. And I can't stretch it. You were trying to avoid the microphone.
I know. I don't like microphones. What I can tell you is that the benchmark with other parishes is to do with searches, and it's a historic benchmark also. So it's a longitudinal benchmark, not just right now. And it's people who are going through searches and also people who are working on strategic planning for their parishes.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about what recovery congregations mean. There's some level of uncertainty, some level of conflict. These congregations want to grow. They say they want to grow. But that growth and that desire to grow is hampered by that uncertainty. We call out some points here. Some of it's uncertainty, some of it's called low morale. And so the desire is there, but the how to do it is in question. And so that leads us to define some of our key next steps that are highlighted in the blue box here, and again on your handout. An uncertain parish like ours, with uncertainty in a recovery congregation, that type of parish really needs to focus on what we as a parish want to do. We need to define our purpose. We need to define our mission, renew spiritual formation, work on reconciliation and healing. That was a big finding from the survey results. There is a lot of need for reconciliation. What are we trying to reconcile? That's something we need to figure out on our own, but reconciliation is a need for us. We need to equip our leaders for the future to do what we need them to do and to meet the mission that we define. We have a lot of attention being made to ourselves, an inward focus. And in order to grow, we need to change that focus to be more of an outward focus, focusing on people, on programs outside of our walls here. That's a big change. It may not feel like a big change, but to modify the way we behave and our culture from an inward focus to an outward focus is going to require some thought, some conversation, some really roll up your sleeves planning, if you will. And then finally, one next step is to embrace flexibility and change. Another difficult task, but one that this organization can definitely do. We've seen our parish embrace flexibility, and we certainly have seen us embrace change. Areas of focus was one of the categories that you'll see in your handout here. So we talked about satisfaction and energy being drivers within our results. And when they looked into this a little bit more, they say that we are most satisfied, based on the results of the survey, we are most satisfied when the leaders of the church, in other words, the vestry, are representatives of the parish, so the governance of the church, if you will. We are most satisfied when worship services are exceptional in quality and spiritual content. That came through loud and clear, and we'll talk about that more in just a bit. Another governance one here, an opportunity for considering different approaches when we're making decisions, that flexibility, that is a driver of satisfaction. That we support people who want to do ministry, who feel a calling to do ministry. And then preparing members to do that ministry. Those bullet points here and in here are indicative of when we are most satisfied. So these are areas that we really want to focus on as we move forward. These are areas that we felt were important in the survey results. The Holy Cow thinks some of our next steps as we move forward with our search committee and as we move forward, period, are to really have some honest discussions. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be doing and figuring out how best to do as we move forward. Critical success factors for improving satisfaction. So we've called out in these two buckets here, these two boxes, responses where where improvement will change how members feel about the church. So there were two general areas: governing approaches. So we just talked a little bit about governance and how that is an important element of our satisfaction, and then ministry. So we're drilling down on a couple of major areas that are important to us and that we need to work on. This, I felt, was where we kind of got to the meat of it, if you will, because a lot of the stuff leading up to now was the Holy Cow group dissecting our information, trying to identify those drivers. But really, at least for me, I hear that and then I think, okay, well, what do we do about it? So what we have been able to do based on the survey results is to identify some future priorities. There are a lot of them, as you can see, and I'm going to call out a number of them. One of the things that we heard loud and clear was that we need to attract families and youth. That came through many responses to the survey, and so that's going to need to be a guiding principle, and we need to figure out how to tackle that going forward. Outreach. So how do we develop a strategy and an implementation plan to look outside of our walls, to define outreach and to define how we're going to do it? That was a major priority. Excuse me. More opportunities for Christian formation. I think some of that work is already beginning, but I think there was a call for more of that to occur. So that needs to be another area of focus. How do we get our parishioners an ability to form more meaningful relationships? Now, I think we're starting that too. We have reestablished foyers. There are opportunities for us to really not only get to talk to one another, but really to develop relationships, to talk and listen and understand where the other sits. Develop the spiritual generosity of people to fund the ministry of the church. That will continue to be a priority for us. And then strengthening the process by which members are called for ministry and leadership and to be our future leaders here. It's a long list of priorities. There is a lot for us to do. It's not a list of priorities that is all around one topic area. And so I think we are going to have our work cut out for us, but I know we're going to be able to make headway and define what we need to do to take us into the future. Now, we called out some notables here, which I think a number of us found were interesting. None of the 17 priorities were shared by the entire congregation. So if you took the survey, you may remember there was some ranking that you needed to do of some different priorities. And that ranking is what led us to these priorities, but there wasn't complete agreement. Apparently sometimes when a survey is done by a group of people, there is more adhesion, more agreement that you find in the results. That wasn't the case with us. 11 of the 17 priorities were listed as essential. So in prioritizing the priorities, I think we need to keep that in mind, that our parishioners who took the survey think many of these priorities really are key to our success. So we do have to make sure that we focus our energy and an adequate amount of energy among these priorities to get the work done that we need to have done. And then there were some younger respondents who said they really wanted more attention paid to social issues. And I think that is key. If we're focusing on youth, which we heard loud and clear up here, make necessary changes to attract young people, families. If the young people are interested in social issues and service, then we need to be mindful of that as we develop our strategy going forward. Some performance areas. An assessment of the congregation was made on 8 areas that are listed here. I don't think, we're not going to read all of these. You have this in your handout and materials. But I think there are a few that we want to call out here. We're hospitable. We feel like we're hospitable. We are friendly, we are welcoming, and that is something that we want to continue to cultivate. Just jumping down a little bit, conflict management. Our responses indicate a sense of conflict. And we talked about that in the survey summary with our Holy Cow consultant quite a bit. I think what I left that presentation feeling was, what are we conflicted about? What do we need to reconcile? And that wasn't something that we called out in the survey, but I think it's something that we're going to need to drill into and really understand what the conflict is, what we need to reconcile. Is it within us? Is it between us and an outer group? I don't know, but we need to define it and then figure out how to restore it and reconcile it. And then just the final one, y'all can read the others, but the final one, worship and music were outstanding. They were really notably strong by nearly all of the respondents from the survey. So people thought our music program is good, our worship program, our experience is quite strong, and they want that to continue. And then just some additional findings that we thought were interesting and useful as we venture forward. So, in general, we scored as theologically progressive, and yet a quarter of us identify as theologically conservative or going to embrace those differences and draw upon them going forward. But it is notable here. We're settled in our ways, but we desire to seek renewal, change, and growth. So, inertia is hard, it's hard to change, and if we want to grow, I think we're going to need to do some change. That's really hard to do. We like being settled in our ways, but I think we're going to need to think differently and behave differently in order to achieve some of the goals that we found from this survey. And then we have something, you may be familiar with this term, I wasn't. We are categorized as having a paraclete culture, intellectually open and reflective, but valuing structure and ritual. And when I heard that, it didn't surprise me. I've been a parishioner here for a while. It makes sense. That passes my sniff test. But I enjoyed having a label to it, a paraclete culture. So a summary. We have a lot that is very good about us, and we want to preserve that and cultivate it, grow it. But we have this conflict that we have to define and figure out what to do with. We want to change and grow. That was kind of a uniformly held principle. We want to grow. We want outreach. We want to figure out how to grow us. So we have some work to do. And it's not going to be easy work. It's hard to change a culture, and that's essentially what we're talking about here. But we are a very resilient group. We're a resilient vestry. We are a resilient congregation, and we will power through. Phyllis, I know that was the summary of the slides. Were there any other points?
First of all, I know that there has been concern about the tool. Let's not call it a survey. As they said to me, this isn't a survey. A survey is like, do you prefer bananas on your cereal or do you prefer strawberries? That's a survey where they're asking you to respond about things that you can say yes or no, this or that kind of thing. This is more of a scientific process that Holy Cow puts together, and they really drill down into to the responses. They have tools. They're strategists and statisticians and scientists. I know we've heard the complaint about having Father Arthur as the name on the survey, the tool. and we presented this to Susan, our consultant, and she said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whose name is on the survey. What your respondents are telling you is their opinions about a climate in general. The second thing is that she was very aware of our diocesan kerfuffle, as it were. She was very aware that we are in the diocese with no bishop, and that we are going through some steps towards reconciliation at the top. So she felt it was not at all surprising to her that we seemed in conflict about things, that these are kinds of things from on high that trickle down to us, and that we then have, we don't know what to do. And so that provides us with a little bit of instability. The third thing I wanted to tell you is that she is Susan, I can't pronounce her last name, Susan from Holy Cow. She is with us all the way through our process, so we can call on her to help us as we go forward. This, as you know, was sort of a preliminary task to getting the search committee on their path to do their work to call a new rector. So we have met together for that analysis, the search committee and the vestry. So we are a team to call on all of you to also be on that team, because we have a lot of work to do. And I do think it's important for people to know that 12 to 18 months can be about what we're talking about in terms of calling a new rector. So patience is going to be very critical, and we will spend a lot of time drilling down on all this information so that we can focus group, we can get people together, and that we can optimize our going forward together. Well, that's what she said. This isn't a survey. You don't have an opinion about, I don't like bananas on my cereal. No, I felt very good about the way all of this information was gathered, and she was amazed that we had such a huge response. She said, "Your response level is amazing, so you've got very good information." It's a different kind of tool. So to that point, the search committee will be involved in further analysis, because at the end of the day, when we go to call a new rector, they want to know what's going on in your parish. We want to create an environment that is attractive to people, not only a rector, but a music director and everything else that we hold dear. So to answer that aspect of your question, there will be some more of that kind of conversation going forward.
So I just remembered the last time we went through this, we had the survey, or the tool, and then there was this desire to have some place for us who did feel conflict to be able to say. And they reopened the tool with that, and regardless of what was happening with that data, it was helpful for those of us who felt that there was some conflict to kind of give that at least preliminary discussion.
Oh, sorry.
So the last time we went through the survey, the previous tool, thank you, that they ended up reopening it with a section for us to be able to enter our own responses. So it gave at least those of us or the section of the congregation that may feel in conflict or have serious things that we want to share with the search committee, that it was provided during the last go through. And I think I agree with Travis. I think at least giving the search committee a chance to understand where people are with the conflict, at least that window would have been helpful. I'm glad to hear that there's things coming up, but I think it would have been helpful to have some of those places for us to give our own thoughts.
Does this go? Come up here.
We've looked up here and we've seen and heard an awful lot about conflict and uncertainty, and we're going forward through a time of flux, and I understand that. We're also gifted. Laura talked an awful lot about that, but we're especially gifted with our priest, co-priest, and deacon, and I'm glad that they're all here. The one thing that we have not been very good about is your vestry and your congregation aren't talking to each other very well. Okay, I can count on one hand the number of times people have come to me as a vestry member and asked something or complained about something or told me they'd like to see it different. 5 people out of 411 some over a period of a year and a half or 2 years, that's not very good. Well, as a vestry, I think that we're inclined to do better, and Lorna and I have spoken, and we'll come back to that in the future and try to get more information to you. But the one thing that I'd like you to do is read who the vestry members are on the order of worship every week, and go talk to them. Go say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I'd like to see better. We need the feedback, and so do you. Thanks very much.
May I respond to that?
Oh, please.
There was a year or two that the vestry was not listed in the bulletin. And I remember going to the members and saying, we need to have the vestry listed. And one of our priests said, and why do you need to know?
You prevailed. You won. It's there. And thank you for being there. His wife.
I have a little saying I love. It's, the past is history. The future is mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present.
I am not contradicting what Clay said, but I do want to answer Kristen. Last time, we did have the Holy Cow, but then Dr. Ann Seraphin created an additional survey, which was created...
We did not do the Holy Cow. I confirmed that with the Holy Cow.
Oh, Jim Salter said we did. Anyway, Ann Seraphin created a survey. Ann did the whole survey, and it was produced to create our parish profile. So that's why there's a difference. I don't think that they will ever open it up, this tool, for people's comments, because they are scientists. They're just digging for the raw data. So there's that. So, and I'm probably talking out the wrong side of my face here, but I'm pretty confident we do have to create a parish profile because years have passed. And so we'll probably do something of the same. I'm not promising that because we haven't even met yet, so.
I think you're right, Rosie. I think you're working on it. Hey, Robert, yes.
I love what Phyllis is doing, explaining the foundation piece by piece in the newsletter. Is it not possible that since there are 12 vestry members, one could be introduced in a similar pattern, either at the service, so they meet the men, just one at a time, not 12, one at a time, and questions can be asked to them. Because I've reached out and met them, and there's amazing resources in the vestry, but and I Googled everybody in the vestry before. But I think I love what Phyllis has done with the foundation. Parallel that would be wonderful.
Terrific idea, Robert. Thank you so much. Jean?
It would also help to know somewhat what the vestry is going to be talking about. I'm glad we have the minutes, but they're like 2 months afterwards, and I understand why, but,
Yeah. We could publish the agenda, absolutely. And what we're starting to do is have some of the vestry information in those e-blasts, and we'll continue to refine that because of the practical issue with the delay in the minutes. So what we're trying to do, and Gregory is key to us in this, encapsulate some of our current focus. This last week, the current focus is what we're going to be talking about in just a minute. Some of our, the associate priest and the youth minister and those sorts of things. So we'll continue that along with, Robert, your idea. Thank you. I think I saw another hand. Yes?
Could you hold the microphone a little bit
Oh,
closer?
yes, thank you for that feedback. I think it's just subconsciously my wanting to pull away. I don't covet being up here with the microphone, but it's important to do. Thank you for the feedback. Other questions? Yes.
I'm concerned about our seeking a new rector when our diocese is such in flux. Our timing is terrible.
So the question was concern about seeking a new rector when the diocese is in flux. Oh, sorry. All right, here we go. Concern about us seeking a new rector when the diocese is in flux. That is a very important issue. We have been the first in our diocese to be experiencing this turnover. I think others are concerned about that as well. But there are a few things going for us there. The standing committee in the diocese appears to us to be quite strong, quite organized, a good group of communicators. And I think they, in conjunction with the bishops that we've got, are bringing organization, transparency to a diocese that hasn't had as much of that until recently. So we're very optimistic that the strength of that standing committee will help us as we go forward and look for a new rector. Is that fair, Father Arthur?
And as has been said, our diocese is itself in a period of transition. And right now, what we're seeing is, do I need to?
I think you may, yes.
No, our diocese is in a period of major transition right now. And that's on several levels. On the one level, simply having no longer having the old bishop in place, and having gone through this period of having, two serious attempts at electing a new bishop, and having major objections to both of those, which have invalidated the election. Because of that, the diocese basically has called a timeout. And in terms of looking for a new bishop, what we are now in the process of doing is going through this series of convocations, which are meant to try to get the clergy talking to each other, which is helpful, and also to try to train people who then can come back out into the parishes and try to sort of prepare the way for reconciling conversations all through the diocese. This is not the only congregation that is not entirely of one mind about anything. It's not only a matter of conflict between the attitudes of different congregations. It's also, I think, that virtually every congregation is conflicted within itself. And a lot of it, I'm going out on a limb here, but a lot of it, I think, goes back to the fact that through the actions of Bishop Howard, who in many ways I think was really trying his best to do well by everybody, but through his actions, we have become pretty well alienated from much of the rest of the Episcopal Church. It's been very hard to get clergy to move into this diocese. And equally, there are people, aspirants for holy orders, who are reluctant to be ordained out of this diocese because they feel that they're not going to be accepted in the rest of the Episcopal Church if they're known to have come from here. So a lot of what's going on right now is an attempt to reunite the Diocese of Florida with the rest of the Episcopal Church. And within the diocese itself, to reunite the congregations to the diocese. So I understand that everybody's in flux right now. Everything is. And on all these levels, there's a real difficulty in having conversations. The lack of trust is huge at every one of those levels. And because of it, we're having to learn how to trust each other all over again. One of the things that has come out that I'm going to lift up to you briefly, partly because Marilyn gave me a nudge, but Marilyn and Ann went off to the first convocation, the only one we've had, and went through the process there, which turned out to be a long series of sessions, basically on ways of promoting conversation that people would be willing to take part in. And I may be misstating this, and catch me if I am, but simply ways of building trust within the community, structuring conversations in a way that aren't going to give anybody one of those gotcha moments, but to encourage an atmosphere in which people really can talk, and especially an atmosphere in which people really can listen. Listening is much more important than talking in some ways. So I'm lifting this up because the directive that came out of that last convocation, the convocation, was now take this back home to your parishes and have meetings like this before the next convocation. Next convocation comes up when, Marilyn? April 6th. So it comes up pretty quickly. And I'd been hoping to work that into the Lenten program that we're having this year. It's not what I normally would do. Normally I'd probably have us doing something desperately spiritual. But it feels as though what we need right now is kind of the practical tools for living the Christian life together. And that's basically what this is meant to provide. So the plan that was sent back with our delegates was to have two-hour sessions between now and then. And I don't know about you, but I have trouble with 2-hour sessions, especially if they're meant to be sort of back-to-back. So what we have been talking about is breaking them up into 4 one-hour sessions. And since we have 4 weeks of Lenten program left, that seemed to coincide pretty nicely. So Lenten program for this year is doing those 1 hour, for the rest of this year, is doing the rest of those 1-hour sessions.
My only problem with that is you're very limited attendance at the Lenten service. And I know I personally have a conflict, I would love to be there. So whether 13 people at the last meeting, that's not enough to do what you're talking about.
You're right. We had small attendance. We had about a dozen, and I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I know that we could definitely go ahead and schedule separate 2-hour sessions at whatever point, and that would be an alternative.
It might be helpful that if there's a desire to have these reconciling conversations, that it's advertised to the congregation, specific topics or questions that we might be asked at these Wednesday conversations, and also reach out to ministries that may have people you want to reach to have these conversations with, that they could be helpful in bringing their members to have these meaningful conversations.
The process we've been given is a fairly set process. So my inclination would be to have a series of gatherings which follow the process the diocese has laid out, but also to start having kind of wider conversations that wouldn't be, because essentially this has been, what we have coming up immediately is a kind of training in how to do it, which I hope will be for most of us basically a refresher. But the other conversations, the ones about specific issues, the ones about the wider situation in the church as a whole and the diocese, and the ones about, within the congregation. I think those are probably follow-on to what we've got here. And I'm saying that because the diocese is not contemplating electing a bishop this year. And I think, honestly, they're not looking at possibly even electing one next year. The conflicts have been, I think, simply too deep. So I don't see this as a short process within the parish either. I think we're looking at a fairly long process. And this is going to be silly. It's not the way I normally work. But I'd simply like a show of hands. How many of you would, and let me state it first and then I'll call for responses. But how many of you would be interested in doing the kind of the Lenten program version of it with the 4 1-hour sessions and including some fellowship with that? Well, don't put your hand up yet. Because the alternative I would see would be to simply schedule 2 separate 2-hour sessions and call those in some special way, advertise those specially, and probably promote them heavily, because I think you're right about the small number of people involved. We simply need more than that. So having prefaced with all that, how many of you would rather go with the Lenten program idea? Just a quick show of hands. Okay, how many of you would rather go with 2 special sessions? Dear hearts, we're just about evenly divided, I think. Both and? Okay, I think maybe we're hearing both and. Marilyn?
May I make a suggestion that we do a combination of both, because we're just at the first layer of the onion on this practice of this convocation issue. It doesn't really have specific issues that we'll be talking about that are conflict. We don't do that until after the April 6th meeting. We're going to have 2 more meetings of these convocations, and we will be bringing back the next layer of the onion on that schedule. So what we got Lent, we got Lent suppers. We could do 4 of them for an hour each, or we could schedule for 2 hours, but we don't need 2 hours.
Well, but also Lent doesn't go on forever. So once we've come to Easter, then we can. That's what I'm hearing. Both sounds like a really good idea. Robert?
I attended the Wednesday. I thought 13 was pretty good, having just gone through the workshop series in the daytime. And I met people who I never met at the church before. And I know a whole group from the workshop. So if it's 13 and this group pops it up to 20, that's not bad. It's not, well, it has to start somewhere, and to get people to go to something new without food is difficult. So they will show up for soup, and they stayed at the daytime workshops because there was food. But I don't think that's, we average 15 people, but in caregiving we didn't because everybody said, well, I don't think it's a terrible number. It's a beginning. If you want to be 20, you call 4 people and invite them.
I hear you.
I remember when I first came here, every Wednesday night, we have a service, although we have a meeting in the, whatever the room is called, and everyone gathered around, and there was a topic that the priest would present, and it was a discussion, and a leading, and we talked to each other, and we met each other, and we discussed theology. And then I think when Gordon left, it went out the door with him.
Well, it's important, I think, to have simply more activities in the church like that. Because, again, that gives an opportunity to talk to each other. And especially if it's focused around a topic. Yeah, I would agree strongly. I think we are on track to do both. We've obviously got some scheduling to do. And Marilyn's point is well taken, that we've had one convocation. There are, I think, is it 3 more before the next? 2 more. Okay, 2 more. And each of those is going to, again, give us homework. And apparently the homework is going to become more specific as we go on. So that should be helpful.
Well, I think I must have missed the memo in terms of the Lenten suppers. If they were intended to be a support or a conversation starter for the purpose of diocese reconciliation, I didn't read that in the material. I thought it was a nice thing to get together for Lent as a spiritual practice, but I didn't see it as a practical.
Well, the first of those. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think I missed the memo in terms of the Lenten suppers being a component of the diocesan conversation starters and reconciliation. I didn't make any connection between those two.
And that would be true, in part because I honestly saw it as an experiment. The first session had nothing to do with the diocesan program. That was simply a, who are we and what's our history here at Holy Trinity. And based on the fact that we had 12 or 13, whatever it was, in order to have the diocesan type conversation, absolutely, we have to advertise more widely. I would agree with you entirely.
I'll try to avoid the microphone, but Robert, I firmly think that Robert's idea of attitude is a wonderful concept when we're going to have conversation. We might even consider piggybacking on coffee hour on a Sunday afternoon, giving 30 minutes for fellowship, and then telling everybody else, shut up. We're going to have this discussion. If you can't shut up, go home. Because we've got 30 minutes of fellowship. Maybe whatever we're going to stick around, I think we can talk amongst each other, maybe we can talk amongst the group.
My only complication with that is the 8 o'clock congregation. But presumably we just tell them they're going to have to come back. I saw another hand.
I like the Sunday afternoon thing because I live in Williston, which is 45 minutes away, and I can't drive at night. And I would like to, and there are probably other people who have that same issue, and it might be helpful to have it on a Sunday after the coffee hour.
Well, again, the show of hands. If we were to do this on a Sunday morning, 2 choices. Between the services, 9:15, or after the 10:30. 2 choices. So, between the services at 9:15, show of hands. After the 10:30 service, show of hands. That one's pretty clear. That one's pretty clear, and Yeah, I agree. Poor 8 o'clockers. Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
What if this is important enough, what if we went to one service and then you do that twice and have it 2 hours?
No, we've been known to do it.
Just for a very limited time.
You couldn't hear that.
I'm saying just for a very limited time to consolidate and have one service and then have the meeting after it. And do that for however many weeks. That would be, and do it as one Sunday service. No. No. Yeah, I guess I have a reluctance to do this in Lent because I would be concerned about both Palm Sunday and Easter Day. Well, and the confirmation classes too, because we will have confirmation on Easter Day as well.
Another suggestion is to just take the 10:30 service and move it to say 11 and have the meeting between these services.
We raised the possibility of doing it between services. The idea of extending the time is not a bad one. Yeah. Laura, what's your wisdom?
Sorry, no. We are nothing substantial, I assure you. We're just trying to figure this out.
I would stick to the schedule for Lent and change the schedule discussed for after Lent. I mean, you can't, people are regimented to a schedule.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to change.
I tend to agree.
Okay, I'm not saying this for you, but this is not a decision that can be made in this room at
The
this moment.
committee.
So, people,
Yes.
the vestry, father, whoever needs to be involved in this, needs to have a meeting and just make a decision, and we will work with it the best we can.
Yep.
We have 13 people, we have 137 people. It's not going to fit everybody's schedule. And we have had multiple conversations. Lent suppers are great, the foyers groups are great, even though that's not the platform we use for foyers.
Right.
Those are strictly supposed to be social. But it's not going to be solved today, so I know there's other things that need to be addressed in this meeting. So I would like to suggest that we let the people who need to make decisions outside this room.
Thank you, Dee. Yes, well said, as usual. All right. Well, thank you. We will do just that. Joyce.
I don't have an answer, but I have an observation. Forgive me. When I was young, a group of us started a new church, a baby church. We started in the Oddfellows home. I don't think it exists anymore. Then we went to Kirby Smith. And there was always this camaraderie. We were birthing something new. And it was exciting. I was 10, but I can remember the excitement that it generated and the same spirit that it generated. Now, I'll have to admit that this church was autonomous. So we governed ourselves. And we had the finance committee always gave us feedback. We voted. We had a vote. And that meant so much to me, even as a kid, that I had a voice. And I think is that what we lack? A common voice? Can we start a brand new life here? I don't know.
Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate that. Maybe so. I think that will be something we want to hold on to and cultivate that thought as we go forward and have conversations over the next series of months. So thank you. Let's move on. I know it's late. We just have a few more things to touch on. Search committee updates. Just real quickly, a reminder of the search. Oh, thank you. I apologize. The search committee members are listed up here as a reminder to you. The search committee is kicking off its meetings here in the next week and a half, I believe. Week and a half. And, sorry, Rosie? March 4th. Thank you. I couldn't remember offhand. And they will be commissioned here next Sunday morning. So just an update on, okay, I thought that was true, next Sunday morning. So more to come on the search committee activity.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Could they be introduced to the congregation at that time so that people know who to approach?
That's a wonderful comment. Can they be introduced to the congregation? And I look to Father Arthur, and I believe that's possible.
That's built into what we'll do.
With name tags?
With name tags, thank you. And noted in the bulletin, yes, thank you. Absolutely. We will evolve our communication to make it very clear who everybody is. Thank you. And then I think this is the final word. You know that there's quite a bit going on here. We have had a number of things that we have been working on. If you read your e-blast on Friday, you would have seen that we have, what were you saying to me, Phyllis, before the service? The ram has appeared. Lots of rams over the past couple of weeks. So we are delighted to have Mother Diane with us. Mother Diane came and visited with the vestry earlier this week, and certainly was a part of the service. We're just thrilled that you are here. Another thing we are delighted about, Brian Moody came to our vestry meeting as well earlier this week, and we are hoping to work with him as the interim youth director, working with some of our teens, which is particularly important as we have talked about the survey results. So that's Brian, yes. And then I think we are very close, at least, to identifying an interim music director. I don't know if that's been solidified, so I don't know that I'll name names, but another wonderful, wonderful person has kind of landed in our lap. And so we have some very, very good leadership to help guide us through this process of transition. So, any questions that anyone has either about these or anything else at this point? Yes?
How often is Deacon Vivian going to be with us?
I don't know. How?
She's probably not going to be with us on any regular basis. We've got a lot of other things going on in life right now. So I hope it's good.
I was saying,
Yes. The question was, how often is Deacon Vivian going to be here? She will not be here with regularity. She has other commitments, but we're hoping that she's here quite often. She is just fabulous. Any other questions? Thank you for hanging in there with us. All right, appreciate it.